New York's legislative session is officially over. This week, our expert panel will break down the biggest items that passed, those that didn't, and how soon lawmakers are going to be back at the Capitol working again. Hello and welcome to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray here in Albany. The legislative session officially ending at the state capitol. The session officially ended on June the 9th. However, lawmakers are already set to come back and start working again. The Assembly will reconvene on the 20th and 21st of the coming week. A number of items will be on the agenda, including coverage for all, which would give health care access to undocumented immigrants, as well as legislation that would add to existing measures that assist those who've been wrongfully convicted.
Instead of addressing changes to bail or raise the age, they went and passed clean slate, which I think is a step in the wrong direction. As far as affordability, I didn't really see anything in the final waning days to provide some relief to New Yorkers who are overtaxed and overburdened with the cost of living in New York.
Joining us now to discuss the end of the session and the Assembly's plans to come back to town and reconvene, it's Patrick Orecki, the Director of State Studies from the Citizens Budget Commission, and Rebecca Garrard, the Deputy Executive Director for Citizens Action of New York. Welcome to both of you on the show.
Great to be here.
Thanks for having me.
For those who maybe never seen you before, in a brief 30 seconds or less, describe what it is you do, your job, and what your organization does.
Yeah, the Citizens Budget Commission is a nonpartisan, nonprofit government watchdog. We focus on New York City and New York State government, especially analyzing the budget and fiscal policy.
Okay, Rebecca, you?
Citizen Action has 7 chapters across the state, from New York City to Buffalo and everything in between, and we are a grassroots member-led organization that focuses on policy changes and transformational shifts that impact everyday New Yorkers.
Yeah, I got the feeling reading both your bios. The one thing you have in common certainly is you look out for the little guy out there, or the little gal, I guess. Legislative session's over now. How would you, not to give it a grade, but you must have an idea when you go into it what you're looking to get accomplished for your organization and for the people you represent. How did that list go and how did it turn out for you? I guess I'll start with you, Rebecca.
So it's not quite over yet for us. We have the Assembly coming back next week. I would say thus far, we feel somewhat disappointed, right? We think there's lost opportunities that we had this session. It felt like the misalignment between the governor and the legislature led to a lot of stalemates and not a lot of wins.
Got you. How about you?
Yeah, and at CBC, our attention is mostly focused on the front half, the budget portion of the legislative session, which obviously bled into the second half of the session this year as well. So paying attention to that, I think in the post-budget portion, one thing that we thought there might be progress on was housing policy. It's something that came up in the context of the budget, has been talked about for a couple of years, didn't really see progress there.
What was the issue with the housing? The governor and the legislature just had different visions of how to get to the finish line with that?
Yeah, and they had competing proposals within their individual budget proposals. Couldn't come to an agreement in that timeline. I think the houses got to something toward the end of session that they saw as a two-way agreement, but thought that the governor was not there with them. So it's something we'll see if they talk about it later in the year or certainly next year.
Is it an issue of, and either one of you can answer this, an issue of not enough money to get done what needs to be done, or just different visions of how to spend the money?
Yeah, if I could weigh in, housing is one of our top priorities. I think during the budget, we felt the legislature did a great job of standing strong in demanding that there be tenant protections attached to housing policy that was very much centered in initiatives that favored developers and the wealthiest real estate interests. And I want to be clear, we think there's a place for everything at the table. We want, it's valid to say that we need to increase supply, but at the same time, we have an unprecedented housing crisis that exists for those who are in existing stock and who need protections in order to be able to stay in existing stock, and we need protections and improvements for those who are currently unhoused. And so I think the legislature did a good job during budget, sort of holding strong and saying, we will not move a housing package that does not have these protections for those who are most impacted right now, right? Tenants who are rent burdened, tenants who are at imminent risk of being unhoused, and those who are currently unhoused. What was enormously disappointing was post-budget, we had this two-way agreement, and instead of really calling the governor's bluff and saying, here is a package that we think meets everyone's needs and addresses the supply issue while also addressing the crisis that exists in terms of people who were most impacted, they attempted to reach a three-way consensus, which is not necessary post-budget,
Right.
and really speaks to the system of checks and balances that our state exists upon, and really, right, speaks to something that is necessary to ensure that everyday New Yorkers get what they need. They yielded to the governor's power that should not be exerted during post-budget, and we ended up with nothing. And it's an abject failure.
I would think too, so much of housing, we hear things like rent control. It's not just a New York City issue though. It's across the whole state, isn't it? That rents are going up, people's incomes are not going up to keep with inflation or keep with that rent, and they're really getting squeezed, aren't they?
Yeah, and that's exactly why it was a priority issue for so many groups and so many legislators and for the governor. When we all and all of your viewers make our own budgets at home, housing is generally cost number one, and it's exactly why the state should be doing things to boost production, to make housing more affordable, and to try to help New Yorkers in every way we can. It really requires a comprehensive strategy, which I think is exactly what Rebecca was alluding to, that everything should be on the table, and addressing it is going to require a big, big lift.
If either of you had the magic wand, and when Assembly's coming back, the Senate's not, but what would you put on your wish list to get done when they get back into town? Would housing be at the top of it, or are there other issues too?
I would say in terms of housing, and then we could talk about other stuff, but in terms of housing, really both sides should come back and pass a housing package that's comprehensive and send it to the governor's desk. And to Patrick's point, we know that it is a multi-pronged policy package to address this. Yes, we need to address supply, but when you look at cities like Syracuse, which does not have ostensibly a supply problem, right? The vacancy rate is around 10%, which would suggest that it is not a supply and demand issue. They still have over 50% of tenants who are rent burdened. They still have rents skyrocketing, right? So we have a problem that is bigger than just supply and vacancy. We need to have some controls over the profiteering that exists in the housing market.
A lot of focus was on, we got about 2 minutes left, clean slate, criminal justice reform. That seemed to get a lion's share of at least the press's attention. Did some of that got done? It seems like both sides weren't completely happy. Is that where we landed on that?
Clean slate passage was huge. Yes, there were modifications that weakened the version that we wanted. I will say it still is one of the few wins we can claim this session. And there are many things we care about that the Assembly can still get across the finish line next week. Coverage for all, I know that is a priority for both of us. Climate Superfund Act, the No Slavery in New York Act is a huge priority for our organization. 7 states have passed constitutional amendments which remove the exception to slavery from the 13th Amendment that applies to folks who are incarcerated. The Senate has passed it. We would like the Assembly to pass it as well as a ban on medical debt reporting to credit agencies.
How hard is it for your organizations to get in there and get an audience with the top officials to get your point across when on the other side you got lobbyists writing checks which put these people in office? Is it hard? Is it even a fair fight in terms of you getting in there and getting their attention, saying, look, I know they're writing you a check, but listen to me, this is important.
Yeah, I think we're primarily a watchdog at CBC, and one of the big issues that we have is some of the information asymmetry, basically between what the government has and what the public has, that allows us to opine and make recommendations. So one of the big priorities, for example, for CBC this year has been budget reform. It was just last week that we got our first look at what the enacted budget numbers were. We're 70 days into the new fiscal year. We got our first comprehensive look at what the details are just last week. So that type of thing is a focus for us.
Got you.
And for us, we're really excited about the public financing campaign program going live in 2024. The key to have decision-making tied to everyday New Yorkers is to be sure that special interest money isn't defining who holds power and who holds office. And so we hope that after the next electoral cycle, we have a very different decision-making process.
Well, I appreciate all the work you do and that you wanted to come in and talk to us today. And I thought you'd be on vacation, but I guess you got to hang around with the assembly coming back to town, right?
Right.
Right.
Indeed.
Well, perhaps we'll have you back after that session. Maybe we'll have some news on the housing or the other issues that you guys are trying to push through. Thank you so much. Again, Rebecca Garrard and Patrick Orecki, thank you for coming in Empire State Weekly.
Thank you.
Appreciate it.
Thanks.
Rapidly expanding artificial intelligence technology, drawing some concerns from lawmakers as well. When we come back, we'll talk with an AI expert on the push for some regulations on this stuff and why many in the industry welcome the oversight. By the way, if you have a comment or a story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out on Twitter or at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Gray in Albany. Artificial intelligence has many uses, from writing college essays to adjusting social media algorithms. However, this rapidly expanding technology is drawing the attention of lawmakers now. A bipartisan group of lawmakers meeting in Washington this week, starting a series of briefings, all on AI. The briefings include companies that make and use AI, as well as AI opponents and other experts. The goal here, to learn about this new technology, to then provide a framework for legislation. Ryan Peterson caught up with an AI expert to get additional details on this push for legislation.
Joining us now to give us a better understanding of AI as well as possible legislation, we're joined by Levi Newland, Senior Vice President of Digital Marketing at the Martin Group. Levi, thanks so much for joining us.
Glad to be here.
So let's talk about this. AI can do some wonderful things, as we have learned, but are people good? Is it right to be a little skeptical, maybe even a little scared of it?
I think it's very fair to be skeptical. It's such a kind of new and emerging platform. We don't totally understand all of the risks that are kind of in place just yet, but we have kind of seen already in these kind of early stages of AI booming of some major issues online when it comes to misinformation that's really being driven by AI.
And let's face it, I mean, some form of it, lesser forms of it are already in use in multiple things, like, you know, your Spotify or your Pandora music. As you enter a song, it learns what you like and plays more songs like the one you listened to before. So it's already in use in a lot of things.
Yes, it definitely is. I mean, you think about your mobile phone, there's been AI tools to do auto correction of spelling and grammar for years now, but AI is really ramped up with our ability to be able to process a lot more data and use that data in more effective ways now, which is really expanding what it's capable of, as well as the utility to kind of even just a normal person compared to some of the higher level corporations that have been using it in the past.
I mean, you know, anyone of my generation automatically thinks of, you know, the Terminator movies and Cyberdyne systems and the machines are going to take over, right? But Sam Altman, who's the chief executive of OpenAI, who created that ChatGPT, which everybody's been talking about, I mean, even he himself sat before leaders of Congress and said, you know what? I think the federal government needs to create an agency here to regulate this.
And I think that there is some base level kind of regulation that probably should be happening on the AI front, just because right now there's nothing stopping a company from creating AI tools that are based on data that nobody has any visibility or knowledge of. And AI is all about good data in and getting kind of good data out. However, if there's any biases implicit in the data that's going in, you're going to end up with AI output that's skewed. And that idea of AI being used for misinformation and the idea of you needing to be able to trust the data you're getting coming out of these tools, you want to make sure it's as accurate as possible. As you mentioned, for OpenAI and ChatGPT, it's using data sets that only go to 2021. So it's missing now 2 years of data. So if you were to ask it questions, it even can't give you the most accurate information back. And while OpenAI may be disclosing that, once that information spreads outside of that platform, it's going to be much more difficult right now to kind of keep tabs on what's real and what's not.
I like that you mentioned bias, because back in 2021, New York City was actually one of the first big municipalities to kind of take some steps and pass a law in regards to AI and companies that might use it for hiring or promotional decisions.
Yes, in the HR space, it's definitely something, as you mentioned, AI tools being in place. For years, HR platforms have existed to kind of scan resumes and understand, is this person a good fit or not? However, a lot of those would be based on the information that's coming in. So if you were to be only basing your data on resumes coming from people of certain education or ethnicities, you're going to have that implicit bias in that AI algorithm, which means you're going to be less likely to hire more diverse people.
So as an executive yourself in the digital marketing realm, what are some of the good points, the nice things about AI, especially in the work that you do?
Yeah, so AI has really been helping us think about how we can scale up some of our efforts in ways that historically we may not have had time or budget to really handle. So the idea being, let's say if we wanted to be personalizing something at scale for one of our clients and speaking to each of their audience members very precisely, we can now do that through AI, where in the past there might have been much more of a manual process to go down that path. So it really helps us just extend our capabilities even further for each of our clients and just provide more value.
Can you give us any kind of a specific example exactly of what you're talking about there?
Yeah, so let's imagine kind of one of our nonprofit clients where they might want to be doing some outreach to some of their potential donors and saying, hey, we're really looking to raise funds this month. In the past, we might be able to personalize emails and say, hi, John, we'd love you to kind of provide some money to us to kind of help us support the people that we support. However, now with AI, we can get a lot more personalized with what that messaging is and actually write a custom email for John that gets very dialed in to what John is interested in and what kind of makes him like this nonprofit, versus in the past, we had to be a little bit more simplistic.
Which might benefit some political campaigns using something like that, yes?
Yes, political campaigns definitely have some benefit in using platforms like this as well as nonprofits, because a lot of times both kind of types of organizations are limited on time and at times limited on funding and staffing. So this helps them better extend what they can do and provide a greater impact. The benefit being too, through that means the more that's coming in, the more they can staff up and the more they can kind of expand their impact overall.
So really, like with anything new, sometimes there are scary aspects to it. We try to get it under control and understand it before we really unleash it on the populace. But AI here really can do some benefit, hopefully.
Yes, I think that a bit of it right now is people kind of learning what it's capable of and figuring out how to best utilize it. We're definitely going to see more people becoming AI specialists within organizations that can help kind of utilize these tools to expand companies' capabilities. But simultaneously, we're still going to be seeing some of this misinformation that's happening by the reality of AI can now generate false information at scale as well as can generate good things at scale. So thinking about kind of being a little bit more, I guess, hesitant to say, I believe everything I'm seeing at face value, and having to have a little bit more scrutiny is going to be important, especially in the social media space.
Levi, thanks so much. Levi Newland, Vice President, Digital Marketing for the Martin Group. We appreciate your insight. Levi, thanks again.
Thank you.
Laws failed to gain traction this season. When we come back, details on the continuing push to update what some call antiquated parts of the state's liquor laws. By the way, if you have a comment or a story idea, please let us know about it. You can email us at news@news10.com, or you can reach out on Twitter at WTEN. Welcome back to Empire State Weekly. I'm John Bragg in Albany. Some major changes to the state's liquor industry were proposed this session, but the measures never made it out of committee. A measure that did not pass the controversial idea or item of allowing wine to be sold in grocery stores. A bill that did get through, allowing liquor stores to open at 10 a.m. and close at 10 p.m. on Sundays. Paul Zuber, the VP of the Business Council of New York, says that while some progress has been made, more needs to be done to update the state's, quote, antiquated laws.
We're caught in this mindset that somehow alcohol and beverage control law in New York State is sacrosanct, and it's not. It was written in 1930-ish, right after Prohibition. Society has changed.
Stick around. We'll be back with a look at the week ahead in just a bit. And of course, you have a comment or story idea, you got to let us know about it. Email us at news@news10.com. You can also reach out right on Twitter at WTEN. Finally, on Empire State Weekly, we are keeping a close eye on the historical criminal case against former President Donald Trump. He's now the first former president to be arraigned on federal criminal charges. The former president pleading not guilty to 37 felony counts for allegedly mishandling classified government documents that were said to be found at his Mar-a-Lago estate down in Palm Beach. We'll keep an eye on any developments from this case and how it might impact the ongoing civil case he's facing right here in New York State. For now, from all of us here on Empire State Weekly, I'm John Gray in Albany. We'll see you right here next week. And don't forget, you can watch Empire State Weekly all over New York State. Here's the full schedule of Empire State Weekly on 10 television stations all across the great state of New York.